Good morning to everyone and welcome to yet another CyberBRICS webinar organized and hosted by FGV. Before we start, let me just share the usual disclaimer. Of course, all the distinguished guests we will have today are participating willingly. They know that the webinar will be recorded and can be published, and they are also expressing only their personal opinion. It, of course, does not represent any official position by FGV. My name is Luca Belli. I'm professor at FGV Law School. I head the CyberBRICS project, and I'm also having now the honor of heading the Center for Technology and Society at FGV. Today, with us, we will have a great selection of special guests together with our CyberBRICS fellows exploring digital transformation and cybersecurity issues in the BRICS countries. So as usual, our main objective is to delve into these very key topics and issues, but from a BRICS perspective, which is usually not the traditional perspective from which these all-important issues are tackled, but it is increasingly interesting and relevant, not only for BRICS countries, but globally. We will have today with us an incredible selection of stars of digital transformation and cybersecurity at the BRICS level. We start with Bruno Ramos, that is the director of the Americas Regional Office of the International Telecommunication Union. Then following, of course, the BRICS order that we usually follow, we will have Colin Murphy representing Huawei. He is senior cybersecurity advisor for the Chinese tech giant. Then we will have Lucienne Abrams. Lucy, she is one of the most acknowledged academics in terms of digital transformation studies, and she is the director of the Learning Information Networking Knowledge Center at Wits University, South Africa. And then last but not least, of course, we will have our old friend Sizwe Snail, Professor Sizwe Snail. He is also not only a professor, but also a commissioner at the Information Regulator of South Africa. Today, we are going to explore some of the technological aspects, but of course also the strategic and policy and politics of digital transformation. These acronyms that are loved by almost all governments as a good maybe marketing move to brand their digital transformation strategy, and they are frequently mixed in the ambitions and sometimes obsessions of countries are going to be debated today, but also some other more policy-oriented topics that we have also started to explore in our last conference that we organized only 2 months ago on the digital, on how the state, the government, public services are going to be updated, implemented, digitized in order to, of course, make them on the one hand more efficient, on the other hand also more transparent, accountable, and user-friendly. We've started exploring this in a dedicated conference that we had in March that will result in a book at the end of the year. Then we are also currently exploring the BRICS strategies for digital transformation that will result also in a volume next year on digital transformation in the BRICS. And today's workshop is key, is essential also to feed this work on exploration and the understanding of digital strategies for digital transformation in the BRICS countries. It will be also a complement of this first main milestone that we have published only a couple of months ago, this book on cybersecurity regulations in the BRICS countries. as cybersecurity, of course, is an essential side of digital transformation. Digitizing everything, the massive and widespread use of ICTs may be extremely interesting, but also may create a wide range of vulnerabilities. And cybersecurity policies and regulations are key in order to face and be prepared to face these vulnerabilities. The last part of this first book we published directed towards an interesting finding that emerged in the first phase of the project, which is that also digital policies, cybersecurity policies, and increasing digital transformation policies are part of a wider vision of digital sovereignty, different visions that the BRICS countries are developing. We have also just closed a call for papers that resulted in a good number of very interesting submissions that will be conveyed into this other work that we are organizing together with Professor Min Jiang from the University of Charlotte, and that is also a visiting professor at CyberBRICS, that will also be released soon. All in all the publications will be, of course, always accessible, together with also the recording of this on our webinar on our website. So I strongly suggest to check our website, because there is already, after 3 years, a considerable number of interesting resources on BRICS digital policies. And this is the last piece of advertisement. We will also release soon this book on digital policies in Brazil, exploring access policies, data protection, and cybersecurity regulations, that I had the pleasure to organize with my old friend Bruno Ramos, that I would invite to be the first speaker and to open indeed the dance of today with an overview from his very good position in order to understand how the different countries are shaping their digital policies and digital transformation strategies within the International Telecommunications Union. Thank you very much, Bruno, for being with us today. It's a great pleasure. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Luca. Are you hearing me well? Good. So, first of all, I'd like just to thank you very much for the invitation. It's an honor to be here with you and other panelists and try to share a little bit the experience of the International Telecommunication Union in digital transformation, mainly in the digital transformation and the days that we are facing and planning the future. So first of all, I will take only 8 minutes, and I'll try to give some. I also like to say in the beginning what I thought to tell you. So I will start with some overview about the work of the ITU in Americas, because I am the regional director for the Americas, and after that I will talk a little bit about the days that we are facing, mainly with the pandemic of COVID, and it's a good time to reflect about the future and what our sector, the information and communication technologies, can help people and help the countries in planning the future about this specific topics. And for sure, I will enter a little bit about the cybersecurity aspects in these days. So, the ITU is the International Telecommunication Union, is a specialized agency of the UN to the ICTs, information and communication technologies. So we work as a standardization body where the members of the ITU, not only the member state, not only the countries, but also we have more than 700 private members. So they come together just to discuss the standards of the ICT sector in order to allow and make some recommendations to allow the countries in implementing and planning the future. A little bit about the ITU in Americas. And this month, the last month in April, final part of April, we had a very important meeting in the region just to think about the regional priorities for the countries in Americas, because we will have a development conference of the ITU. Probably it's upcoming conference. We are discussing if we are going to have the conference this year or the next year. But it's important to say that the Americas countries, the members of the ITU, defined 4 priorities for the next 4 years. The first one, deployment of modern, resilient, secure, and sustainable telecommunication ICT infrastructure. So it's important, so it's very clear to us that all the members are thinking about infrastructure. And in the infrastructure sector, so we have secure and sustainable telecommunication ICT infrastructure. So it is the first priority for the next 4 years in Americas, and where one of the countries of the BRICS are included, that is Brazil, in the same priority. The second priority is enhancement and expansion of digital literacy, digital skills, and digital inclusion programs, especially among vulnerable populations. So after infrastructure, we need to teach, we need to include people by education. So digital literacy is very important for the countries. And the third one, effective support for the digital transformation and innovation ecosystems through scalable, founded, and sustainable connectivity projects. So they are saying to us that we need to work with some kind of practical programs, practical projects to effectively support the digital transformation, not only studying, but helping the countries with projects. And the number 4 is development of enabled policy and regulatory environments to connect the unconnected through accessible and affordable telecommunication ICTs. So in this 4th one, the countries are saying that enabling policy and regulatory environments are very important to support the transformation. Being one of the UN agencies, it's important to say also that in this contemporary world, that the forms of social and cultural interactions and also the economic development, so we are changing very, very quickly by the evolution of ICTs. So these new technologies are not only allowing us to exchange the information, but also they are changing the way that people is connected, and we need to think also about those who still remain disconnected. And as I was saying, being an UN agency, we need to include in this 4 regional priorities, but also the sustainable development goals. I think that putting in the planning of all countries, all societies, that we need to reach the 2030 agenda of the UN that the countries signed in 2015 for the next 15 years. So we are in the remaining 10 years. We need to think, and including in the priorities of infrastructure, digital development, projects, and also innovative solutions, we need to think how we are going to reach the sustainable development goals. Elimination of hunger, achievement of health, quality education, gender equality, availability of drink water and basic sanitation, provision of clean, accessible energy, so decent work, existence of industries and the innovation infrastructure, reducing inequalities, construction of smart and sustainable cities, search of responsible consumption and production, trying to work on global climate change and protect the water life and terrestrial life. And for sure, search of peace. We need to add these things for the 4 priorities. Finishing my speech is, so as I said, I'd like just to talk about the first priority, about reliable and secure infrastructure. In this kind of point, we enter cybersecurity. To inform you that the ITU has the Cybersecurity Index. So we are working on the last one that we're going to publish this year. And the Global Cybersecurity Index is a reliable benchmark and measure the countries committed to cybersec. We have 5 pillars in this Global Cybersecurity Index: legal measures, technical measures, organizational measures, capacity building, and cooperation. So on this last one, cooperation, and this is the final part, is it's very important to highlight the importance of this cooperation with FGV, Luca. So we are very proud to have FGV as a key partner of us, working in the development of new ideas for the future, trying to bring what the members of the ITU think and try to help the organization of the countries for these changes that we are facing. To finish, just to say that in the BRICS, in the last cybersecurity index, we have good positions in the index. I will not say here, but Russia, in this order, Russia, China, India, South Africa, and Brazil are positioned. So we are here just to help also the members of the BRICS in order to help them in evolving in the index with the work that we are doing. Luca, that's it. Thank you so much for the invitation again, and I'm here to any questions if it appears in the chat. Thank you. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Bruno. And yeah, that also thank you for reminding me that all the participants that are following us through YouTube can use the YouTube chat to add questions, and then we will convey them to speakers toward the end when we'll open the floor for a Q&A. Thank you very much for highlighting these initial points, Bruno. It's always good to have your insight and vision. And also, let me also stress that since the very beginning, when we were conceiving this CyberBRICS project, you also provided us with very important insights, and it's always interesting to have your ideas, and we will of course keep on enhancing our cooperation also with further projects on digital transformations, which we are always scheming about. So now to pass through to the next speaker, Colin Murphy. He is senior cybersecurity advisor for Huawei. Huawei, Chinese tech giant, which has found itself as a victim of its own success in a sort of digital Cold War over the past years. It has had tremendous success in development of its project, is a key partner of many governments, and Mr. Colm Murphy is today with us to speak a little bit about what is this private sector vision of digital transformation and how Huawei is enabling it through various technologies, projects, and visions. Thank you very much, Colm, for being with us today. Please, the floor is yours.
Good morning, Luca, and thank you for that introduction, and thank you also for the kind invitation to participate today alongside your other guests. I'm going to share my screen. I have a short, a couple of slides which hopefully will guide me through this conversation. If you can see it okay, or if you can't see it, maybe tell me, but hopefully you can. So I'm Colin Murphy, and I work with the Global Cybersecurity and Privacy Office in Huawei. And that means essentially we set two things. We set the policies internally and ensure they get executed around the world in the various business lines. And we also assist in terms of the cybersecurity solutions that form part of our customers' requirements, such that cybersecurity is up front and center in those various programs. So rather than go into some of those digital transformation projects, I'm going to talk a little bit about security and cybersecurity specifically. And as you know, and I think you mentioned, Luca, when it comes to cybersecurity, there's no lack of focus and attention around the world on Huawei. And actually, we think that's a good thing in a sense, because it keeps us on our toes to this very important issue, and it keeps it very much as the top priority within the business. But in the context of digital transformation, as you will all know, I'm sure, many countries around the world have published their digital strategies in one form or another. In fact, Huawei operates in over 170 countries around the world, so in 156, and our colleagues in ITU may correct me on this, because the figure 156 may be out of date by now, but most recent figure I found was 156. But that's quite interesting in that it's absolutely the center feature of government strategy all around the world, and we know that. I have a figure down there which I'll quickly point to, which is that by 2025, and that, you know, this is debatable whether it's 30% or less or slightly more, but it will be a substantial or significant component of global GDP will come from the digital economy, and that raises the stakes, particularly as we get into the cybersecurity conversation. So we are really entering this intelligent world, all things sensing, all things connected, and all things intelligent. And you've heard them, and in fact, Luca, in your introduction, you mentioned, I think, 5G, AI, and the fourth industrial revolution. What we need to be very mindful of is that all of these things, what's underneath all of that is literally ICT infrastructure, technologies, data centers, 5G infrastructures, cloud, big data, IoT, and all of those things. And they are computers and hardware and software and connectivity. And when you have that, and when we have these kinds of opportunities, we have to be alive to the challenges that will come along with them. So we talk in Huawei about cloud. We talk about software-defined networks. We have a substantial, significant global AI business. We're very well known for 5G, and of course, that enables a new world of IoT. But all of these things bring new challenges, as I said. So, for instance, in times gone by, there was clear boundaries with where data may be within your own control or your organization's control or your individual control. Not so much anymore. You may interact in cloud models whereby data moves around the world, which brings risks. We call it in the world of cybersecurity the attack surface. It means there's much more stuff, and when there's more stuff, there's more potential vulnerabilities and opportunities for things to go wrong or cybersecurity issues to arise. And I think a good analogy actually is the aviation industry generally. We haven't quite got there with ICT. And I mean, we hear a lot about 5G and Huawei's up front and center. And we hear accusations around the world about cybersecurity. But you know, really, when you think about aviation, there's a number of players. There's a shared responsibility. There are the regulators, of course, the policymakers and the regulators. We have manufacturers, Huawei's one in the ICT space, and we have a whole lot of other players and stakeholders. And it's all of those, that community working together to essentially make us feel comfortable when we step onto that plane, you know, and we have the same challenge here. So in terms of the digital transformation that's underway and will accelerate, the opportunities are clear. We heard already, Luca mentioned smart cities. We heard Luca talk about energy and sustainable clean energy, healthcare, education. And when we think of things in terms of manufacturing and how that's been, changes are underway. And again, the automotive industry in terms of autonomous driving and so on. All of these things have marvelous opportunities, but on the right-hand side here, you can see there's serious work that we have to do alongside that. And that's in the context of the fact that, whether we like it or not, hacking tools are becoming more prevalent. They're becoming more sophisticated, and we, as in the cybersecurity community, have to deal with that. There are very sophisticated attacks happening right now as we speak. In fact, where I'm from, Ireland, the health service today shut down literally all of its IT systems because of a actually a denial of service attack. And there are these advanced persistent threat type attacks underway, and they are getting easier and easier for criminals and others to carry them out. But all hope is not lost, and that's absolutely our position in Huawei. There is things that we can do. We've heard about from Bruno just now that, you know, there are we need to build resilient systems. We need skills enhancement. We need ecosystems that allow cooperation. And of course, we need the policy and the regulation to go on top of all of that. So all is not lost. We're up to the job. We shouldn't let us hold us back because of all the important reasons. We know we want to make the world a better place. We want to connect the unconnected. And to do that, we need to take care of cybersecurity. So my final point would be that it's all of our responsibility. You know, as a manufacturer, we have a role to play. Clearly, we have to make our products as secure as they can be. We have to give assurance to our customers and in turn to their customers. But there are other players. We have the standards organizations, of course, who can tell us what good looks like. They can help us figure out what we should do. We have the operators of networks who have their role to play. After all, they own and control the networks, they operate them, and they have to take care of security. And of course, we have a whole ecosystem of service providers sitting on top of that, and they have their role to play. And not to forget, of course, the individual. And through training and education and awareness programs, we can help there too. So that's our role in this. We've one role to play. We take that role very seriously as a manufacturer. We, for example, have, where I work in Brussels, have a network of transparency centers around the world where we encourage these kinds of conversations. We invite people to discuss, to collaborate, to cooperate, and to expand their ecosystems and learn. And of course, if anybody ever someday wants to come visit us in Brussels or indeed in China, we have a center opening actually in June. And if anyone would like to attend, visit any of our centers anytime, you know, please reach out, because conversations are important. Collaboration and cooperation is deeply important if we're going to solve these issues. So that, Luca, I'll stop there. I think that was 9 minutes. But of course, as questions arise, I'm happy to take them.
Thank you very much, Colm. And indeed, I'm sure there will be questions. I would like just to pack them all to when we will open for our debate. And it's very interesting what you were saying, the various dimensions, the need for cooperation, But also, on the one hand, it highlights the very ample margin for incredible business opportunities for those who are developing these ICTs. On the other hand, the enormous need for a very well-conceived strategies from governments in order to reap the benefits of digital transformation and, if not avoid, at least to mitigate the risks. And on this point, I think it's very good. Actually, it's really excellent to have today with us Lucy Abrams, because she has been working on digital transformation from years, and she is one of the leading scholars on digital transformation studies at the University of Wits in South Africa. And it's very interesting to have her vision today for us on how this process of digital transformation is taking place, how countries, BRICS countries, South Africa, but also other countries may be preparing to this digital transition. And so thank you very much, Lucy, for being with us today. Please, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you very much for the invitation. It's good to be part of a community. For today, I wanted to cover more, but I thought it might be better to cover less. And so I'm going to focus on talking about fintech. I have a similar overarching perspective to Bruno's perspective, namely that the economic and social innovation that all our countries seek is built on a number of legs. The infrastructure leg, where of course certain forms of cybersecurity are very important. The human resource leg, where while we concentrate on innovation, usage skills, innovation skills, and cybersecurity skills are all equally important. Then, of course, the applications without which the infrastructure would be meaningless. And finally, the digital leadership environment where policy and regulation, which policy and regulation is part of. And I will talk a little bit about that. So fintech is interesting because it cuts across everything. Like ICT or digital technologies, fintech is also cross-cutting to the economy, many different parts of the economy. So fintech is the foundation in many cases for this transition to smart cities and smart villages. And we just to recall that when we talk about trust, creating trust as a very important aspect of the world, of a cyber-secure world, we're talking about at least confidentiality, integrity, availability, authenticity, and non-repudiation. So let's just take a quick look at fintech in the BRICS countries and how very quickly it's advancing. In 2017, we see that the leading market was China, followed by India, the UK, Brazil, Australia, and South Africa, not lagging too far behind, with average adoption of fintech in South Africa higher than average global adoption. And if we look at the types of fintech that our BRICS countries are engaged with, the BRICS countries are actually leading across the board, perhaps because their banking and financial systems leave a lot of space, leave a lot of room for the emergence of these new fintech opportunities. But if we look across money transfer, China, India, Brazil, financial planning, China, Brazil, India, savings and investments, China, India, Brazil, borrowing, China, India, Brazil, insurance, India, China, South Africa. So really powerful presence in the fintech market. And by 2019, just 2 years later, the BRICS countries ranked number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4, number 16 across 27 countries, where I think it was Brazil was the lowest percentage, and that was around 64%. So if we look at consumer fintech adoption, this is on the demand side. There is significant demand to meet that supply. 20, 30 years ago in South Africa, and I'm sure this was the case elsewhere, there were many questions about whether there was really any need for mobile technology, for mobile voice, for mobile data. And people kept saying, really, we're going to have, such high bandwidth infrastructure, who's going to use it? And of course, nowadays, nobody asks those questions because there is just more and more demand. Demand is growing for these highly innovative products and services. So all our countries do not only have digital strategies or digital transformation strategies or digital economy strategies, they also are focused on building smart cities and smart villages. So while we think of the range of possible fintech solutions and how they slot into smart cities, smart cities can, of course, be highly exclusive and can tend to exclude low-income communities, poor-income communities, and marginalized groups. But we see a big focus on smart villages, not only in South Africa, but in fact across a number of African countries, and I'll refer to that in a moment. I just want to move that's a better view, right. So amongst the favored, the more popular uses of fintech is fintech used by small and medium enterprises, and in a few African countries by savings and credit cooperative societies. So these savings and credit cooperative societies, they call them different names in different countries. So in South Africa, for example, we've had this name, stokvel, which is an Afrikaans word, and it simply means that groups of people get together and they save together. And these stokvels really saw people through, periods of great difficulty prior to democracy in South Africa, where a large proportion of the South African population did not have access to banks and savings opportunities. And so these savings and credit societies became very popular, and some of them have large numbers of members, and saving millions or hundreds of thousands of rand. And they, like others, are targets for phishing, for ransom, for social media attacks, and so on. And of course, even though South Africa is the only country whose name appears in the BRICS, we can't, just talk about South Africa, because we are all, with fintech and with any financial services, we're all connected. So South Africa's connection to Kenya, Uganda, Nigeria, trade and so on, but also China. I mean, China has a very large presence, and so does India, very large presence on the African continent. So in that sense, the BRICS countries are really connected to Africa. One of the pieces of research, there's a company called Seriano, and they remarked on this huge increase in unsecured connections across the African continent when it comes to fintech. But despite all these challenges, so kind of starting from the challenge and then going to the pursuit of a digital economy, an African digital economy, and an African digital economy that is integrated into the global economy, because of course that is not currently, Africa is not as strongly integrated into the digital economy, the global digital economy, as it could be. What this means is that while we need to take care, while we need law and regulation, we also need policy and regulatory frameworks that enable rather than limit this fintech evolution. Sadly, the laws in many African countries are very recent. Well, having said that, you could say, yes, but the EU GDPR is also relatively recent. Uganda introduced its first data protection law around 2019. The South African Information Regulator was appointed in December 2016. I'm sure Sizwe will tell you more about that. So South Africa has only had a period of 4 or so years. And in fact, on the POPI page, on the Information Regulator page, we have 48 days to be compliant with the legislation. And we don't have a cybersecurity law. So the cybersecurity draft law is awaiting signature. And I'm getting to the last, second but last point. What's really crucial in the regulatory environment, once that cybersecurity legislation is established, and I'm keen to hear the information regulator's view, is this trend to future-oriented regulation, light touch, principles-based, risk-weighted regulation rather than rule-driven approaches, where we engage in the type of collaborative regulation. We get together in regulatory sandboxes, we open the discussion to stakeholders, and that tends to lead to perhaps less hostile standoffs. And of course, finally, the importance of secure by design applications. So I have a few more points to make, but I think I should pause there. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Lucy, for this really excellent overview. And I really like the fact that all the presentations are building and intertwining on each other's. I really love the initial remarks by Bruno, how also Colm stressed complexity and how the relevance of the private sector role in this context, but which cannot be played alone. It has to be a cooperative effort. Lucy, the Fintech case study was really truly excellent because it really proves also that the BRICS countries, although they are frequently considered in a very not politically correct way developing countries, they are actually leapfrogging and becoming even hubs for innovation. And the fintech is really a clear example. In Brazil, one of the only Brazilian unicorns is Nubank, that is indeed a fintech, where several FGV colleagues now work there as top executives and is now providing financial services to the entire Latin America. So it's really an excellent example of how the digital revolution could be an incredible engine for development for BRICS countries. Also, there are several risks that need to be tackled at the same moment. And here, the work of the government and of regulators is key, is fundamental, is excellent to have Sizwe Snail, Professor Sizwe Snail. He is professor at the University of Fort Hare, and he is also one of the commissioners of the Information Commissioner of South Africa. He is also, of course, a good friend and one of the members of the CyberBRICS Advisory Board. And so it's a great pleasure to have him again with us today. Please, Sizwe, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Prof Belli. It was also very interesting to listen to Dr. Abrams just now. I think she set the stage for what I'm about to say. Like I said earlier on, I don't intend to use slides. It becomes a little bit repetitive once you use slides too many times. But when listening to the general topic that was discussed here, the fourth industrial revolution, the artificial intelligence aspect. I mean, these are all words that we are currently hearing in our news, in our policy approaches in South Africa. We even have a new policy now that's being driven with regards to data and cloud data as well. So our government in South Africa, really in the last 10 years, really trying to overhaul policy and as well as rewrite the laws. Dr. Abrams was correct to say that, even in terms of legislation, we're not exactly very fast. We've been waiting now for the cyber crimes bill to be signed into law. I think about 9 months ago, I said to you that it's been sent to the president, but why isn't it law yet? So, those are some of the issues that we have. Then we have our Electronic Communications Transactions Act. That law is now, about 21 years old. We've been talking about amendments in the ECT Act. Every 2-3 years, we hear there's going to be amendments. And then the amendments just disappear. So I think on the data protection side, South Africa was also forced, because of the international impetus regarding data protection, really to see to it that the POPIA, as we call it, that become a law. And yes, for the last 4 years, the Office of the Regulator has been setting up shop. You've heard just now 48 days until the 1st of July. So it's a bit of literally a novelty in terms of other people's understanding, to get people to understand that there actually is a data protection law and that you can actually complain to someone in the event where your data is misused or abused. And I think it has now created also a good separation between cyber criminality as well as data protection. I know that both concepts, data protection as well as cybersecurity and cyber criminality, they all have the aspect of security, right? In other words, I heard the previous presenter talking about one must try to move from a risk assessment approach to a more rule-based approach. And that is actually quite correct, because if one looks at the data protections provisions and the ECT Act that were there, they were not expressly there, but if you look for them, they're actually there, right? They were not a duty. They were a like-have. You could decide to comply or not to comply. Now with the POPIA, it's a law. It's a rule. You must have safety and security mechanisms in place that are technically and organizationally, according to scratch. So, our law has really, really evolved from what one would say 5-10 years ago, a backward thinking law to a really evolving law. And hopefully in the next 2 to 3 years, we will see a new African Union convention coming out due to all the activities happening on the African continent. I think that almost does my 9 minutes.
Thank you very much, Sizwe, for all this. And it is very interesting to see indeed how a comment that I really liked is also what you stress, the fact that on the one hand now POPIA, the new data protection law in South Africa, is going to enter fully in force. So there is only 48 days left to comply. So it's now that it has taken a lot of time, but now it's going to be a reality, is a reality. On the other hand, it took really 8 years. So it since the adoption to full entry in force. So this is also something that on which not only BRICS countries, but all governments have to work in a more strategic way in order to shorten the times from the adoption to the entry in force, to avoid even that law become obsolete, and also to have regulators that, as the South African regulator is doing, constantly work to try to update and be really at the forefront of the implementation and the most recent tendencies in the implementation of the law. Speaking about the most recent tendencies in data protection, I would like now to start our very quick overview of BRICS updates before we enter into the debate with our CyberBRICS research fellow Wei Wang from China. China has recently tabled the second draft of the new personal information law, the second draft of the bill of the personal information law, as well a draft of the information security law. So major changes for 1.5 billion people, plus all the people and businesses that are interoperating with China. So Wei, please, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you, Luca, for having me here, and thanks to today's speakers as well. Please let me share the screen in the first place. I made a couple of slides for a better navigation. Yes. Okay. Can you see the slides now? Okay, thank you. So today, I'm very happy to share with you some updates about the Chinese second draft of the personal information protection law and the data security law. Yes, currently the NPC of China is calling for public comment on those two second drafts. As for the Personal Information Protection Act, because due to time limit, I won't only provide you with provides some major amendments with you today. For example, the second draft of the Personal Information Protection Act is actually introducing we can see giant platforms ombudsman obligations through its Article 57. That is to say, the new draft is actually to establish to require the big giants, the tech giants, to establish an independent oversight board and periodically publish transparency reports of personal information protection. As we can see here in the Article 57, it says personal information handlers, or we can see personal information processors that provide fundamentally internet platforms have a huge number of users where a complex operational model shall perform the following obligations. That, for example, establish an independent body, complies in many of the external personnel to conduct oversight of the personal information processing activities. And in the third point, we can see it requires the platforms to periodically publish some social responsibility reports on the protection of personal information. I understand it as a transparency report of personal information protection. And the second draft of the PIPA also improved some principles of personal information processing, enriched the rules of legally processing personal information, and particularly, I think it enriched the rules about consent withdrawal and automated decision-making and even cross-border preventions. It also aided preventions on protecting personal information of the deceased. Most importantly, I think, is to further clarify the relevant responsibility of the cyberspace administration of China. That is to say, it clearly states the cyberspace administration of China will be in charge of the the personal information protection as a whole. Yes. So in terms, as for the Data Security Act, I think the major amendment is that it introduced the data index in a catalog. That is to say, it focuses more on the important data. we can see previously China allowed the private sector to define what data are important, but currently it seems that China is seriously considering reassigning this privilege to the state itself. That is to say, it's actually creating a centralized or top-down approach to governing data security issues. Okay, I think that's all my part for today's update. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Wei, for this short and sharp update of these two key pieces of legislation that are now under discussion. There is a public consultation indeed going on. We have time for the last couple of updates before we open the floor for discussion. I now would like to ask to Anya Orlova to provide us some updates from Russia. We have heard from Sizwe that South Africa has some ambition of spearheading, well, cooperating with other African leaders for maybe a African convention. Russia is going to also push for this kind of convention, but on cybercrime and information security at the UN. Please, Anya, let us know more about what are the latest Russian news.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Luca, for having me here. It's my pleasure. And thank you for the panelists for their highlights. So I'll talk about the plans that Russia has unveiled recently, mainly in April of this year, on promoting the Russian candidate to the position of the ITU Secretary General in the 2022 elections. According to Chernuchin, or Ernst Chernuchin, the Foreign Ministry's Special Coordinator for Political Use of Information and Communication Technology, transferring Internet management prerogatives specifically to the ITU, as it is a specialized United Nations body, has all the needed, expertise on these issues. So electing or promoting the Russian candidate seems to be a logical step for the Russian government to achieve this strategic objective. And moreover, Russia also is proposing to hold the 2025th anniversary United Nations Internet Governance Forum in Russia. So the candidacy of Rashid Ismailov was announced on April 7 by Maxim Parshin, who is the current deputy minister, and he underlined that the Russian government believes that it is important to define an entity within the United Nations framework that would develop and implement legal norms and standards in the field of Internet governance. And Russian government thinks that the ITU could become such an entity. And this move to have a Russian candidate to head the United Nations International Telecommunication Union is also seen as an effort to supplant the current private group known as ICANN that coordinates Internet addresses. So on the 21st of April, Ernst Chernuchin specifically speaking at a live-streamed conference said about the ITU that the Russian Federation has been consistently calling for the internationalization of the management of the Internet, as well as for increasing the role of governments in this process. And he also said that multi-stakeholder model of Internet governance has demonstrated its ineffectiveness a long time ago, and added that the Russian Federation within the United Nations system insists on adopting a number of coordinated measures, including development at the intergovernmental level of global policies in the area of Internet management, among others, within the framework of achieving agreement on new international telecommunication regulations. And as he said, as the Russian government sees it, The optimal option for this would be transferring internet management prerogatives specifically to the ITU, as I already mentioned before. And this is this strategic objective can be achieved by promoting a Russian candidate. And it is also important to highlight that on 12th of April, President Putin put into effect the new basic principles of state policy in international information security. And some of the items of the document that was proposed state that the Russian Federation should work towards creation of conditions that would enable the United Nations member states to pass a convention for providing international information security. And this document also calls for work to advance the national standards of the Russian Federation on related to information security in international and regional cooperation in the area of standardization, and work to facilitate their adoption as international, regional, and interstate standards. And to sum up, I can just say that there's been, in the past 6 months, Russia has been demonstrating and raising cyber-related issues with increased frequency, both on the national and on the international level, and in various United Nations and other intergovernmental organizations where cyber-related and internet-related discussions are taking place.
Thank you very much, Anya, for this update. And actually, it's very interesting to see that the Russian candidate for ITU would be Mr. Ismailov, that actually was one of the panelists of our first CyberBRICS workshop at the IGF 4 years ago. And he has been very vocal proponent of BRICS, so it would be very interesting to see how this will evolve. Now, the last but of course not least, updates from Brazil. We have started with Brazil. We'll end with a couple of very key and quick updates from Dr. Larissa Galdino, our CyberBRICS research fellow that is working on Brazil, and then we will open for a good 10 minutes of debate with the panelists. Larissa, for yours.
Hello, Luca. Good morning. It's to be my pleasure to be here today. I want to share some updates about Brazil. As you know, you have the last 2 years, Brazil has launched several strategies and policies for digital transformation. Nevertheless, the guidelines for cybersecurity did not prevent failures and attacks on systems of public administration. So in the first months of this year, we are marked by data leaks and cyber attacks with denied servers between public agents. And in the case of the attack of the Superior Court of Justice was considered one of the worst attacks in the country because the ransomware encrypted all files on the systems. So it was evident we have a lack of preparation of the public administration to respond to the attacks and the failure about the systems. For otherwise, recently, the federal government changed the governance model of the information security policy. And it centralized the action in the Secretary Office of the President of the Republic. And it included the accident prevention dimension for the federal administration and the fourth article. And also reinforce the government support through the Center for Treatment and Response to the Cyber Accidents. Despite of the new rules, there is no coordination between all the agents. So the agents create the particular strategies. And today I want to highlight the information security strategy of the judiciary. because the National Council create a security strategy with cyber crisis committed, protocols to prevent and manage the investigate problems. In the meeting, we have a pre-crisis management that assess the maintenance of the activities and assess all the risks. We have the cyber accident prevention protocol for serious damage. And we have the general protocol with a phase of the policy investigation for the accidents and attacks. So the new strategy are starting the right time, the good time to us, because right now the government has more than 1,000 digital public servers and more than 100 million registered data from citizens in the portal. So the digital government law recommends some guidelines for the security government platforms. However, there's no alignment to response to the accidents, and it seems that there are no general policies and basic measures such as the CAP. And the question is how you can move for the state, for the security state, you know. And I believe that the strategy from the judiciary shows that simple measures can help us, such as assessment and the monitoring of the risk and all the platforms together, implement one incentive structure for government agents, such as to adopt the control, security, and exchange information, and also encourage the participation and forums, committees to ensure the transparency and faster response to the accidents. So,
thank you, Larissa. Thank you, Larissa, for this update, both on the policy side, but also on the frequent incidents and leakages and cyber attacks that are interesting Brazil even more during this time of pandemics when everyone is constantly connected. Now it's time to open the floor for discussion. There are a couple of we have received several questions in our chat, and there are a couple of directed questions to speakers that I would like to start with. So the first one is directed to Colin Murphy, saying that he has indicated that cybersecurity challenge is a shared responsibility, but can you point out to some concrete examples of this shared responsibility working in practice? And,
excuse me, Luca.
I just wanted to point out the second directed question. It is for Sizwe, Snail. So as you may have heard, only yesterday, the information regulator took a very interesting stance towards the WhatsApp privacy policy update. And as WhatsApp is becoming a key platform and service for communications, but also for increasingly for businesses, the question is, how do you envision the consequences or the follow-up of the decision of the information regulator? Can you clarify more on what is the stance of the information regulator on the WhatsApp case? So I will start with Colm, then Sizwe, and then we can open for general questions for others.
Hi, Luca. Thank you for the question. I'll try to be as brief as I can, but I think there is one good example in the world of telecommunications that we could look to. There is has always been a difficulty in, well, let me actually rephrase this. With 5G, security is a critical element of any 5G network, given in the future that we expect certain new services to be potentially reliant on 5G reliability and security, and therefore it raises the bar. And then the question arises, well, how do we know a 5G network is secure? And one way is through third-party assurance via certification. the difficulty we had in telecommunications is there was never really a certification that we could point to that was specifically designed for that purpose. So a good example of responsibility and shared responsibility was whereby 3GPP, who are the people who define the 5G standard, along with GSMA, which is the Global Association for Telecommunications, got together to define a standard called NESAS, or Network Evaluation Security Assurance Scheme, I think. And what they did was involved all of the ecosystem. So the operators of networks themselves, the manufacturers, all of the manufacturers, competitors, and they defined a standard by which you could certify equipment. But what's happening now, particularly in Europe and in other places, is that they're going to use this as part of this particular certification scheme as part of an overall, as part of one tool of an overall set of measures that can be used in any given country to give assurances around 5G security. So it's an example of the industry-led, expert-led approach, and a government and regulators identifying its usefulness and taking it into their policy decisions.
Thank you very much also for highlighting how this multi-stakeholder cooperation can also work with private sector as a driver, and then other stakeholders utilizing what private sector cooperation can put at service of everyone. Now, Sizwe, I would like to ask you this very easy question about the information regulator stance on the WhatsApp case, please.
Thank you, Prof Belli. Yes, the information regulator has taken a very interesting stance regarding WhatsApp and Facebook. Initially, it was in January when the initial announcement was made regarding the change of the terms and conditions. That was then in the news. There were several correspondence between ourselves and Facebook, WhatsApp. And then after a while, there was again this announcement that the 15th of May would be the D-Day in terms of the policies and terms and conditions. We have now, as a regulator, taken a very, should I say, direct stance, similar to that of other regulators and other jurisdictions. You may have noticed that it's not only South Africa that's taken this high stance, but there's regulators in Europe that have also said, no, enough is enough. And, you know, WhatsApp, Facebook, as much as they are a private company, which we appreciate, they still have to subject themselves to the laws of the various countries, which includes data protection laws in particular for the purposes of this discussion. So we have now instructed attorneys to write to WhatsApp, Facebook, to try in an amicable manner to see if this matter cannot be resolved without litigation. Should litigation be necessary, then you shall hear of that in the not too distant future. What we've also now done is our portfolio committee on justice, that actually is the oversight body of the information regulator in Parliament. We have now asked the portfolio committee also to invite Facebook, WhatsApp, for them to come and testify before the portfolio committee as to what exactly it is why they cannot comply with the laws of South Africa. So I think that's in a nutshell the summary of it. And South Africa also party of the RADPA, the Round Table of African Data Protection Authorities, that has now taken a stance against WhatsApp and Facebook because of the terms and conditions that seemingly are not the same as those of EU citizens. But we'll leave it at that.
Thank you very much, Sizwe. And indeed, to stay in the BRICS context, only last Friday, a group of Brazilian regulators, the antitrust regulator, data protection regulator, consumer protection regulator, and the public prosecutor office sent a joint recommendation to WhatsApp exactly in the same with the same spirit, highlighting that they were requesting to suspend the update so that a thorough evaluation of how WhatsApp position may be dominant in imposing these updates and what kind of data protection impact was undertaken by the corporation, if any, before implementing the privacy policy. Was indeed highlighted by the regulators, together with this key question, which is why this update applies in different ways in Europe and in other countries that are, as Brazil or South Africa, have GDPR-based laws, but the implementation seems to be quite different. Now, to come back to more general questions that I would like also to address to all the panelists, there are two questions that were also in the chat. So first is how can cybersecurity regulations and law at the same time protect individuals' rights, but also leave enough space for business to innovate? And the second question is, what do you see as the biggest obstacle in the success of digital transformation today? These are two $1 billion questions each. So who wants to earn $1 billion? I don't know if maybe, I see Bruno, maybe you want to provide a couple of elements to try to reply to these questions. Bruno.
Yeah, thank you, Luca. You know, I will start with the last one. I think it's almost impossible to say that it's only one thing that is it's important. So I must say, I was thinking, because I saw the question before, so I was thinking just, and what I think is one point that should be raised by all governments is, and the ITU is studying this, is the new generation of regulation. It's the collaborative regulation. So it's something that it's important to highlight here. So it's impossible right now to keep the regulation in the one sector. So the ICT is, spreading the arms in all sectors. So we need to work in the regulatory aspects, thinking on all sectors: health, transport, even public security, cybersecurity, even the defense, a lot of things. So I think it's one point, and for sure the other panelists can add other specific points. I will not enter in money, that it's important to implement, and the infrastructure that we need. And for the first one, I think that the main point is to think about, and for each country, about the social development. So the first thought should be on the social inclusion, social development, and think about the needs of the population. Thinking on that, everything comes after. So that's my thoughts. Over to you, Luca.
Thank you very much, Bruno, also for still again highlighting the needs of having individuals at the center of the policy, and this also resonates with what we have been stressing about the need for capacity building as a central piece of any digital transformation strategies. Probably the best suited to give some final remarks and to conclude is Lucy Abrams. Please, Lucy, if you have any final thoughts to share with us, this is the moment to provide some final remarks and some maybe proactive elements and some food for thought for next works.
Yes, thank you very much, Luca. Just very quickly, I'm going to share my screen again just for a moment. There we are. Sorry, I do agree that the approaches to regulation in this even more complex environment have to shift from the command and control to the collaborative, to the adaptive. But many regulators do not have that capacity. And so this is a significant learning process, both in terms of the kind of continuous research that is needed to stay abreast, even if it's simply a question of the regulator collating research that is out there, industry research that is available, reviewing it, analyzing it in the regulatory context. And I think that then that second crucial point, the regulator capacity, advancing the regulatory capacity to act in such adaptive and collaborative ways. If we look at just a figure here, 1.3 billion population on the African continent, and the estimate in 2017, it's probably a little bit bigger now, but I doubt it's grown by orders of magnitude, an estimated 10,000 certified cybersecurity professionals. Typically not working in regulators. So I think that just gives us a sense of the magnitude of the challenge. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for this, Lucy. And indeed, there is a lot of work for us working in education and in digital policies. But actually, before ending, I wanted, because Sizwe raised his hand, and I wanted to give the last words to the regulator, as we are speaking about regulation.
Thank you, Luca. Now, I just wanted to say that laws regarding cybersecurity and laws regarding data protection, these are not laws to inhibit innovation. These are laws that have been specifically designed to regulate the lawful processing of our personal information, as well as regulate the manner in which people generally can conduct themselves in the internet space. I think without any regulation, our internet space would be complete chaos. So, I just want to leave you with the idea to say, laws are not necessarily there to inhibit progress or innovation, but they are more there to try and regulate, excuse the pun, regulate a situation where it might look as if, there is a gap and the state needs to come and do something about it. That's my last words. Thank you, Luca.
Indeed, thank you very much, Sizwe, for this clarification. And please let me thank everyone for your excellent contributions to today's workshop, yet another great success. And we really look forward to having you again here with us, discussing this and more digital policies issues from the BRICS perspective. Thank you very much and have an excellent afternoon or evening, depending where you are in this moment. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you,
guys.
Thank you very much. Bye.
Luca, thank you so much.
Again.